So we got that on there. So
Great.
well, that's that funeral dirge is great for what we're talking about today. So anyway,
I think it was actually Darth Vader, but whatever.
oh yeah, it was Imperial March.
Yeah,
And
Imperial March.
the way you were doing it, it sounded like a funeral dirge. Anyway, welcome back to the Project X podcast. I am one of your hosts, Alan Smith, along with
I am Big Dave.
And today we have a sad topic. It's so sad the dog won't shut up about it either. And but no,
He's back there crying.
this comes from something that happened recently.
We probably should put some funeral music in
Yeah,
right here.
I mean,
'cause
it is-
you're broken up. I think I see tears.
It's, we lost Toys R Us a couple of years ago. They shuttered finally. I mean, I know that, Toys R Us Canada and they're still in Japan and a few other, countries around, that kind of stuff. But in the U.S., we lost Toys R Us completely. They all of them shut down, and, and it's one of those things that, it was a company that had been around for 80 years. A little over 80 years when they shut down. And honestly, the reason that they had to shut down is because of some real, pardon the language, some real fuckery for, in the financial situation. It was Bain Capital. It was Mitt Romney's venture capitalist group that screwed them.
Yeah.
And but that got me. What started all this is that the local Toys R Us here is just a couple of miles from my house. I was driving through there a few days ago, and they had actually started demolishing the building.
Yeah.
And that...
I mean, Halloween Express didn't even get a chance to go and move into the carcass.
I know that was a thing, last year that was people talked about, oh, yeah, the Halloween Express has moved into these,
Hey, and no hating on Halloween Express.
No.
I love
Yeah.
Halloween Express.
But it's one of those things
But they're
where,
almost like a hermit crab.
Yeah, exactly.
They move around crawling into empty buildings.
Yeah. And so this was that really, really hit home of this isn't coming back. Now, I know that this year, I can't remember the company, that someone bought the name Toys R Us, and Jeffrey and all that kind of stuff, because it's that, and you see that a lot with bankruptcies where people will buy the assets like names. Same thing happened with Blockbuster Video.
The intellectual property.
Yeah, because it has name recognition.
Yes.
That is, and that name has value, so they can put it out there, as something else. And they haven't announced some that they're not opening the large stores.
They're kind of going to go back into malls, like one of the stores I'm going to mention.
Right, they're going to go back into malls and only in select places, and they also have some kind of deal with Target.
Yeah.
To where they're basically going to have, like, in the toy section, it'll be like Toys R Us it have the Toys R Us name on it or whatever,
The toy section will be
brought to you by Toys R Us or whatever, and I'm like, okay, at least they live on that way, besides just in the hearts of all of us. That because I'll say it now, and I will say it for the day I die. I will always be a Toys R Us kid. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about that. I was still shopping at the place all the way up until the end, so it wasn't my fault that they went out of business. I was still giving them a lot of money.
Yeah, you were going in and buying out the clearance stuff and the going out of business stuff.
I hated that they went out of business, but I did enjoy those sales. I can tell you that much.
This man has a Lego addiction.
And this was before I even got into Legos that much. I mean, I was buying like vinyl pops, and I was buying, but I was also looking to like their video games, because they have closeouts and all that stuff. And at the time, my son was really into like the Peppa Pig and some stuff like that. Some of the stuff he was into. Of course, I was still kind of doing Marvel Legends and some stuff, So it was one of those things that it worked out for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we are back.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
When nature calls.
Where were we before that?
We were talking about
Toys R Us. Okay,
so
I did give them money all the way up until the end, and I was there. Our local wing, there was a certain date they were going to end. Like they were all shutting down on this date, and I made it a point to go back. I was there the day before they were supposed to shut down, and they were down to nothing. I mean, it was, they had most of the store cordoned off, it was all up near the registers and stuff. And I wanted to go back on their last day just because. Because this is the thing. I mean, I know it may sound strange to people, but Toys R Us was just a big part of my life from the time I was a kid all the way through, And so it was one of those things that I went back on the day they were supposed to close, and they never opened. So I actually was there on their final day, but they just didn't reopen.
They probably had already sold everything at that point.
Yeah, and I'm sure whatever little was left. Now, the funny thing about it is that they left the electricity on for a while after that on the inside, and I have a picture of it that I took like maybe a couple of weeks or a month afterward or something. It was a nighttime, so like all this everything's lit up. The signs lit up. On the inside, and from where I took it from across the street, it still looked like the store was open. Yeah. I mean, because even the like their cash registers were still. Like they had the computer cash registers, and you could see they were still on everything. Yeah. And I remember coming through there one night, and everything was just dark, and it was like, oh, I guess whatever they went. But driving through there the other day, and half the store being down, it really hit me hard. And what was the thing about it is that, and I told you this earlier because we were up there, was that my son was in the car with me. He's 6, and he doesn't remember Toys R Us because he was still really little, when we would go there. But we pulled into the parking lot, and I took a picture of where they were doing the demo, and he kept saying, "It's broken. We need to fix it. It's broken. We need to fix it." And it was just like this is just making it even worse on top of it all, And I was like, "Yeah, buddy, it is broken. We do need to fix it."
It's not just broken. It's dead.
And it's one of those. Like I said, we can get into this just a little bit. What happened with them is that they were doing really well all the way through. They were operating in the black, well into the 2000s, like the early 2000s. They were kind of slow getting into the online. They had to deal with Amazon in the very beginning, and they were selling their stuff through there.
And Toys R Us will eat anybody's lunch.
But it wasn't Amazon's that did it, okay? It was because they pulled out of that, and they went to ToysRUs.com, and they never quite got the hang of
the online
stuff.
And that you mix a politician in.
What happened was that Bain Financial saw how well they were doing and purchased them for, I forget what the amount, it was $1 billion somewhere in there. So if you know anything about venture capitalists, what they do is basically they'll have like they'll buy several companies or something like that. They'll bring them all under one umbrella, and then basically what they do is that they will and what they did with Toys R Us is that they bought Toys R Us. It was still going to be its own autonomous thing, under their umbrella. But what they did is, since Bain Financial had spent $1 billion buying them, they basically took the $1 billion that they owed, that they had spent, put that debt on Toys R Us.
Yep.
And then turned around and sold off their share in Toys R Us for several $100 million, and made this big profit, because technically they did not have $1 billion worth of debt in purchasing Toys R Us. Toys R Us had $1 billion worth of, or however much it was, and that's what wound up sinking them, because all of a sudden a company that had been running in the black for decades all of a sudden had this huge crippling amount of debt because of something someone else did. And that's what sent them under. And
I may have friends that do this, but if somebody walks up to you and go, "Hi, I'm a venture capitalist. I'd like to invest in your company," run from them, because they will buy your company to tear it into little bitty pieces and sell it off for a profit.
And that's exactly what they did to Toys R Us, and that's why we don't have them any longer. And it's.
See, whereas Toys R Us was your toy store.
I love Toys R Us.
I didn't live in a city big enough to have a Toys R Us until we moved here. Unfortunately, 3 of the stores that made up the 3 different toy stores that I got stuff from my childhood, they're no longer in business.
Which one are you talking about?
Well, there's 3 different ones, and I've got them on my list. Number 1 being KB Toys.
Okay, you do know that Toys R Us owned KB Toys, right? Eventually, they bought them out.
Yeah.
But KB Toys also has been trying to make a comeback, because I think in all of that, they were sold off separately.
Yeah.
And so the company that bought them were like, no, we could bring them back as pop-up stores, like during the holidays and stuff.
No, bring them back to the malls, please.
But the thing is that malls are dying. I mean,
you get all that. You get all the open air mall stuff.
But that's the big thing with the malls, is that the malls themselves are dying.
Yeah.
Go ahead. That's.
The other one's Kmart. Growing up,
Okay.
as a kid, you had Sears, which is slowly going away because you had the Sears Dream Catalog,
Right.
and you had the Kmart Toy Catalog.
Eh,
It wasn't as good as the Sears.
no, not in the slightest.
If you're living in a small town where you got a Kmart and you got the catalog, you couldn't just look at the catalog. You actually got to go over to the store, And Kmart's one that's no longer around anymore.
Well, they were Kmart. Okay. Kmart had, again, they did what a lot of companies, like they'd been around a long time.
Yeah.
They did the same thing that a lot of companies do that have been around and been successful. They basically overbuilt,
Yes.
and they,
Looking at you, Dollar General.
yeah, they definitely overbuilt and saturated the market with their own. Because it's one of those things. There were Kmart's all over the place.
There were Kmart's like there were Starbucks are now.
Sometimes, because it was because here there was the one that was here in Madison. Of course, if you're not familiar, but there was one basically down the street from where I live.
Yep.
But then there was one in Goodlettsville, which is the next town over, which is not, just a few miles away. And then there was one in Hendersonville, and then there was one in Gallatin. And these are all, for those of you that don't know Nashville, it's one of those things where basically there's 31A, which is Gallatin Road.
Well, it's 31E.
Or 31E,
It's
okay.
31E.
That runs from downtown Nashville all the way to Kentucky.
All the way through Kentucky.
Yeah, type thing. But it's one of those things that going down that street, basically, it's like you cross over another highway and it's Madison, and then you go into Goodlettsville, and then you go into Hendersonville, and then you go into Gallatin, and so it's one of those things.
And what's funny is if you keep on that road, you end up in the little town that I was born in that I keep talking about.
Yeah,
because
true.
it's all in the same highway.
That's true. But it's one of those things where you got to think, okay, so there's all these little towns that are right next to each other. Literally, they go from one to the next to the next to the next, and each one of them had a Kmart.
Yep.
Well, that you
Kinda
can't
like Walmart
you
now.
can't sustain. Well, Walmart with the supercenters, they've pulled back quite a bit, because it's one of those things
and
where
they're trying to compete with Dollar General now
Right,
with the neighborhood
right.
markets and all that.
And-
but that brings me to the third store.
Well, what was I going to say about Kmart?
Yeah,
They did
go
all
ahead.
that. They accrued a lot of debt because of it.
Yeah.
And
And
their
because Walmart
stock
was eating their lunch.
Walmart and Kmart, and we have people talk about, that's the Kmart version of, because they were always seen as other.
Yeah.
They were not, that's prime example, the GoBots. They were people always say, they're the GoBot, they're the Kmart Transformers, which basically means they're the not very good.
Yeah.
They're not really a knockoff, but they're the lesser of the two.
It's kind of the way Target and Walmart are now.
Yeah. Target's kind of the up now,
Yeah.
and Walmart, but what wound up happening is that in the late 90s, Sears bought Kmart.
Yes.
And
They bought Kmart. They bought LL Bean.
yeah, they bought several, but that with the Kmart, what happened?
Yeah.
They bought Kmart, and then, which means Sears Roebuck, which had been around for over 100 years,
Yes.
all of a sudden accrued a ton of debt because of that, because Kmart had a bunch of debt, and so they wound up closing down a bunch of stores,
Yep.
and they started putting their product, like Craftsman,
Yes.
wound up going into Kmart as well, because Craftsman was a Sears product.
Yep.
And so it's one of those things with all that debt and everything, that slowly over time they started shutting down all the Kmarts. I guess it was 3 or 4 years ago when they closed them all. All of them went. Might have been longer than that, because who knows with days anymore. But Sears is now closing.
Yeah.
And that Sears is one of them that's on mine. And I remember, because there used to be a Sears here in Madison. It was a standalone. It was outside of a mall.
I think I remember
Yeah,
that.
and it was one of those things that it was like, I have memories around that place, because I remember when you walked in the front door that faced, the main highway, there was a big candy counter there.
Oh, yeah.
And that was really cool. But then I also remembered that's where I bought my first Transformers and G.I. Joe
Nice.
and some of that stuff, because it was like, and the Sears catalog, like their wish book that came out every year, was one of the, I looked forward to at Christmas every year. There was Sears, there was JCPenney, which is also closing.
Yeah.
But their catalog was another one that had all the toy stuff.
Yeah.
And the third one in that for me was Service Merchandise. So we'll talk about them in a minute, because
Service Merchandise.
I know a little more about that one. But it's
my first bookshelf stereo was a Garrard that came
from service
from
merchandise.
service
Yeah.
merchandise.
So, but because of that acquisition of Kmart, that pretty much started Sears down this spiral.
Well, Sears was a boat that had an anchor, and they took on 3 more.
Exactly. So that's why Kmart went away.
Yeah.
And now Sears is going away because our local Sears, when they moved it from the standalone to the mall, you know, it was one of the anchor stores. You know, that was one of the, you know, we had JCPenney and that, and Dillard's.
Another
and,
store that's gone away, Castor Knott's.
And Castor Knott's. That was a local, like our regional anyway,
Yeah.
you know, but they were bought out and then bought out again and then bought out again.
It was
and
Castor Knott's.
went to
it was
Profits, which I worked for Profits
Then
when they
it
first
was
came in, and then it was Hex. And then they were bought out by Macy's.
Yes.
And now
And now
Macy's,
Macy's
is
is
gone.
going
Also,
away,
they're closing a ton of those stores as well.
Yeah.
So,
My wife actually
which
worked
is
for
funny because
Castor Knott's.
because Macy's owns Saks
Yeah.
as well. And not Saks owns Macy's. Macy's owned Saks,
Yeah.
Saks Fifth Avenue. They bought them, and they closed a bunch of those as well because of it. And again, it's that whole, and we're going to get into that in a lot of this stuff. It's throwing bad money at worse money.
Yeah.
You know, is what it comes down to. And you that is a spiral of you're going to close. you're going to burn this thing to the ground if you keep doing that stuff. So
But
anyways, what was your third one?
The third one was the first place that I got toys when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And this is when we were still living in that little town in Kentucky, and it was a store called Big K.
Yes.
It was big and in a great big K.
Right.
And a lot of folks don't.
And Big K, that is a drink also. It's a
Yes.
brand of like
From Kroger.
it's an off brand. It is now.
Yeah.
But it started with Big K.
Yeah.
That was their kind of, you know, like Walmart has Sam's brand,
Yeah.
you know, and that kind of stuff where it's basically Coke or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's got a different name.
But it's the Kmart version.
Exactly. exactly. So,
But I doubt there's very many people nowadays that remember this, but there were certain stores, especially grocery stores, that if you went and bought, you would get a certain amount of, it was a certain brand, it was G&H green stamps.
yes.
And you would get your stamps, and you put the stamps in the book, and you would save your stamps. And then there was an actual
catalog,
G&H
right.
green stamp store. We had a store.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I never saw one of the stores.
Yeah,
I've seen the catalogs before, but
There were catalogs, but we actually had a store, and we would go in there, and Mom would use those green stamps, you know, to buy, you know, pots and pans
Right,
or stuff that she needed. But she would also get toys with them, and you know, between the Big K and the G&H green stamp place, that's where I got most of my toys at when I was a kid.
yeah, that who was? I think it was a local. There was a local here in Nashville. It was H.G. Hill Food Store.
Yeah.
that used to do those when I was a kid.
Yeah.
You know, and that's another thing that there's plenty of, and just about anybody can talk about local and regional stuff that's not with us any longer.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we had another department store that was here in Nashville. It was Harvey's.
Oh,
And-
my wife talks about Harvey's.
Yeah, and there
all
was
the
only
time.
2 of them, and it was over here, right around the corner from where I live, you know, back where the Denim and Diamonds used to be.
Yeah.
You know, and it was really cool because I mean they were massively overpriced because a lot of, you know, especially locally owned stuff is
Yeah.
always more expensive than, you know. So, but what was really cool is their logo was it was a carousel horse. And I remember walking in that store, and when you walked in, the escalators were right there. Like you walk in maybe 20 feet or something, the escalators, because it was a upstairs and a downstairs.
Yeah.
And the escalators were right there, and there was this huge carousel horse that hung above the elevators, or the escalators right
Oh,
there.
nice.
You know, so it's one of those things I remember that. And then there was a store downtown also. That
Yeah, that's.
people-
I think that's the one my
Yeah.
wife talks about.
and so, yeah, again, you're getting into local and regional stuff, you know, depending
Yeah.
on. But let me look at my list here because
Yeah,
I've got so much stuff on here that. Okay,
And a lot of these are from where the mall culture's dying,
a lot of it is.
and a lot of mine are come from the malls.
Here's another one, another department store that is no longer with us that I have just fond memories of.
Yeah.
Was Hills Department Store.
I vaguely remember
Okay,
Hills.
it
there
was-
was a Hills in Hendersonville
There
when
was
I first
there
moved in.
was and it
And
was
it went away like 2 or 3 years
yeah.
after I moved in.
There was one here in Madison where the Old Time Pottery.
Yeah,
is.
okay.
Right there. Now, I can walk into that place now because they haven't really changed the inside of it much. I mean, obviously, seriously, because like the checkout lanes are exactly where they were before. I mean, everything in there except like they don't have the snack bar any longer at the front when you walk through the doors, and that kind of stuff. But I can walk through that place with you and tell you almost exactly where everything was located.
Nice.
In there of like, the electronics were here, the toys were over here, the boys' clothes were here, the home goods were here, the blah, blah, blah. I mean, like, I can just about go through that entire store and show you where everything was located because we used to go there. It was just right around the corner from where I live, and we went there a lot. And I associate a lot of toys with that place.
Hill's Department Store.
I also associate a lot of Atari games with that store because that's where we would usually go to buy them.
We got all of ours from Sears.
So, it was one of those things that, here and there, but it was so close to where we lived that it was.
In fact, my Atari 2600 was actually the Sears.
The Sears
version, where Sears paid
black,
Atari.
What do they call it? The Vader is what they. It's been recalled that it's all black.
No, it was all black with a white face where the buttons were, and they basically paid Atari to.
They licensed it is basically what they did, and that was how Atari first got into stores, and then Atari went with. No, we're Atari. We don't need Sears now. But Hill's Department Store, I used to love that place. And it was another one of those where they didn't do catalogs or any of that kind of stuff. I mean, it really was they go in. But I remember in this, especially for those of you who are listening, if you know anything about toys. And G.I. Joe especially. I just got a new tattoo
I'll get
last week, and it is G.I. Joe centric. It is the tattoo that both Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow have on their forearm, on their right forearm. And that, again, goes back to when I was a kid, reading the comic book and that becoming like finding out about that and being like, oh, my God, what's going on here? There's a story, And, of course, it played out over years of them explaining, what happened. But I remember when, if you know anything about the 80s G.I. Joe, that they started in 83. Yeah, 83. And that first wave, was all, you had Snake Eyes was in there, and it was his original look where it was just like the black with the goggles, that kind of stuff. They redesigned him a couple years in, which became kind of what people think of now, where he kind of has that visor that goes all around his head, and the pouches, and that's when Timber, his wolf, came with him, and he had the backpack and the sword and the ninja sword, all that kind of stuff. Because when he just came with an Uzi, that's kind of what his thing was. But they redesigned him a couple of times, but that became like you had that first wave of him, and then you had the second one, and those two. But anyways, when the first time that I found that second one was at Hill's Department Store, nice. I remember like walking onto the aisle and seeing it there, and there was a kid that was already around my age that was standing there, and he picked it up and was looking at it, and I'm kind of standing there like, please let him put it down, please let him put it down, please, type thing. And he did eventually. And almost as soon as, I didn't even let him walk away hardly before I grabbed it, and I was like, oh, this is mine, It's
nice.
And, running in front of my mom, I was like, please gotta get this, please, and it's just, I have those associated, memories with that store as well as a lot of other stuff. I mean, I remember bought a lot of clothes there, again, it was cheap. It was low, it was right here close, and that kind of stuff. OP stuff, they a lot of Ocean Pacific, a lot of Dayglow neon colors. And,
Mad Dog jams.
Yes, Mad Dog, all that stuff. And it just, I just, like I said, I know
those in your Vans, black and white checkered slip-on sneakers.
But they've been gone since the early 90s. I think it was either 90 or 91 when they closed down everything, they went completely under. They were kind of regional. They were mainly in the, like in Virginia and West Virginia and Pennsylvania, that area and stuff.
Yeah.
But they came down into Tennessee and Georgia and Alabama and a few places like that eventually. So it was kind of regional as well, but
Yeah.
but it was big enough to where a lot of people, especially around these areas, like would remember Hill's department store. What do you have something else that?
Well, as we've talked about in a lot of the other shows, as a kid we moved around quite a bit, but it didn't matter where we lived at. If you went to the mall, one of these two places were at the mall.
Okay.
And now they're both gone. And
Okay.
that's Camelot and Sam Goody. It's where I bought a lot of my music from. It's where I get band T-shirts from.
Yeah,
It's where I
yeah.
get posters from.
There was, and we talked about this because I told you when we were kind of talking about this earlier.
Yeah.
That I didn't put Camelot on here because technically they're still around.
No, they're not.
I know.
No, they're not.
They were bought by FYE, or they became FYE, I guess. I don't know if they were actually purchased by them or what, but they rebranded.
They got Empire Records.
Yeah, and even FYE, I don't know if they're not what they used to be.
No.
In that same vein, because I have some stuff, but you remember when Blockbuster Music?
Oh, yeah.
You remember when they moved in,
Yeah.
and I sat many, even like mornings. I got up real early on a Saturday morning when concert tickets went on sale and sat
Yeah.
on that concrete outside of Blockbuster Music and bought really good seats for for concerts, But again, that was another one of those. Blockbuster was kind of overextending themselves,
Yes.
and Blockbuster Music didn't last very long, and then it became Warehouse Music. Is that right? I
Yeah,
think it was
something
something like
like
they changed
that.
the name, and then it disappeared after a while.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, Camelot and Sam Goody. So we had a Sam Goody here. My buddy Rob was the manager. This is before I knew him.
Yeah.
And Brody worked there also.
Okay.
Like that's how they met, was working there back in the early 90s. And I remember going there quite a bit. It was over here at Rivergate at the mall again.
Yeah.
We have a local mall that's we'll talk about malls here in a minute because there's a whole lot that
We've
goes
got
with
one
that.
that's dead and one that's dying.
Yeah, pretty much. And we have more than one that died over the years.
Yeah, but this one's been reborn as a
I don't know what it is.
Open
It's a
air.
dirt mall, I can tell you that much. But anyways, it's one of those things where Sam Goody, I loved Sam Goody.
Oh, yeah.
Because it was one of those things, they hired a lot of people that were around my age. I never worked there, but it was one of those things that the people who worked there were in that late teen, early 20s type
Yeah.
thing, and I discovered a lot of music through them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
With their listening stations and also just recommendations from people that were there.
I would go in there and just sit at the listening
I know.
station. I'd look at the guy and be like, "We got open behind the cabinet."
Well, do you remember when they would have they would have several of them set up?
Yeah.
And so and then they even moved into where they had multi discs in there, so it would tell
Yeah.
you like disc 1 is this, disc 2 is this, and you could go and you just let me hear disc 3,
Yeah.
and you punch the button and you could listen to go through. So yeah, that is something that I really miss from those types of things. Also in that is Media Play.
Oh, Media Play. I miss record stores.
Media Play was so weird because they came on like gangbusters when they started
Yeah, they did.
really moving across the country, because they started in Florida.
Yeah.
I think they started in Florida, and then they moved into this area.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things. They had this huge building, and it was funny watching
Well,
them.
they bought the old Rural King building.
Yeah, but what was funny was to watch them get smaller though.
Yeah.
Where it was they had this huge building and they had all this stuff. They had a cafe in there, and you could
Yep.
buy, you could buy clothes, and it wasn't it was band T-shirts and stuff like that. You could buy posters.
Yeah.
You could buy toys. You could buy video games. You could buy music. You could buy movies. It was just all this stuff, and it was everywhere. And they would carry a lot of import CDs and,
yeah.
and a lot of anime and all this. It was just one of those things. It was whatever you wanted, you could find in here if it
And
was
then
media
one
related.
weekend they shut it down for a weekend, and
They made the building smaller.
when you came back, there was a new wall, and suddenly an electronics store had moved into the part that they shut down and put a wall on.
Exactly. And then they stopped. I remember the big thing was when they stopped carrying cassettes.
Yeah.
In the early 2000s, they're like, well, we're not doing this anymore. Makes sense. Nobody's buying cassettes anymore.
Yeah, it's
hardly.
all CDs now.
And and I also remember when they moved from VHS to DVD,
Yep.
you know, and like when they stopped carrying, you know, VHS but it wasn't long after that they were gone. I mean, it was just, I want to say 06, 07 when they finally shut down, somewhere around in there. And it was one of those things where it was like, man, they were giants for a good decade.
Yeah.
And then just gone.
Just poof.
And, you know, the same thing, and the whole thing, they bought Sam Goody. That's why Sam Goody, you know, it was one of those things that when they moved in here, there was a Sam Goody right up the street from where they moved in. So they shut down that Sam Goody, which is the one where Rob and Brody had worked, you know. And then they started shutting down Sam Goody's. And, you know, same thing with Suncoast.
Yeah. I forgot about Suncoast.
You know, again, inside the mall, you know, and that's where you would buy your video, you know, your movies and stuff, and you know, all that, and on different merchandise, collectibles, and all that kind of stuff. But it was one of those things that they were purchased. They were part of, I think Sam Goody and Suncoast were part of the same parent company, and then Media Play bought them, and so, well, we don't need a competitor close by.
I miss
you know?
Suncoast.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten about Suncoast.
Again, one of those things you could go in and talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Hey, what about this? When is this coming out? You know, blah, blah, blah.
What are you watching right now?
Right. But the problem with Suncoast, with some other problems with other stores, was that they got to the point to where they were really, really trying to get you to buy subscriptions to like Entertainment Weekly through them, because they had some kind of deal and they had to like sell so many a month or whatever type
Looking
stuff.
at you, Best Buy.
Yeah, you know, and
now every time you go into Best Buy to buy something, it's like, would you like a subscription
yeah, I know.
to Entertainment
No, I don't.
Weekly?
But the Sam Goody had their own magazine. It was called Request Magazine, and I remember, you know, because they had some kind of, you know, you buy so many CDs, you know, and you can get a free one after so much time or whatever.
It was like buy 10 get one.
Yeah, something like. And I bought enough music back then that but part of that program was you also got a subscription to Request Magazine.
Yeah.
And I had a bunch of those for a long time, and they were really cool because, you know, it was kind of like a Rolling Stone or something. It was all music though. I mean, it was like
it was
kind of
like a commercial CMJ
Spin or something like that, you know, and that was kind of cool. Now, when we started talking about that type of stuff, we talked about record stores, Tower Music.
And books.
And books. And, well, the whole thing, there was Tower Music, books, and video.
Yeah.
Okay. And that was one, again. That was
a destination store.
It was.
Because that was downtown on West End, across from Vanderbilt University.
Right. And it was one of those things that originally you had Tower Records.
Yep.
And then they opened right across in the same center. There was a little center right there next to where that building was. They opened the Tower Books.
Yep.
And the thing is they were open till midnight.
Yes, they were.
And so me and my friends would go down there and we would go to Tower Books first, and they had this huge magazine rack.
Yeah.
Any magazine you wanted was there. I mean, any magazine you wanted was there. And it
almost rivaled my Book World.
Yeah, Book World. Yeah, well, actually, it did. I mean, it was.
No, it did.
Huge, but it was one of those things with Tower. You know, we would go there, and then we would go over to Tower Records.
Yeah.
And the back part of it was Tower Video.
Yes.
And of course, you know, you could buy the video, but it was actually a rental. You know, like Blockbuster or Hollywood or something like that. But they always carried like these really obscure movies.
Yeah.
Stuff that you wouldn't be able to get at those other two places a lot of times, you know.
Yep.
And that was like I said, it was a destination every weekend. Every weekend we go down there.
Well, a lot of times we would go downtown to like a show or something, get out, and then we'd run over to Tower and buy, you know,
because it's right there where Elliston Place and West End come back together, you know. So and so it was just, I loved that place. I really did. I
miss Tower Records.
I discovered
so
a
much.
lot of music at Tower Records, again because of the listening stations, and also just talking to people that, you know.
I learned about a lot of music by being abused by the client.
And I was going to say, there was also that was one of the things with Tower. You
got abused by the music snobs that worked there.
I swear they exclusively hired music snobs in that place. That's all they had. You know, every time you would ask for something, they just like roll their eyes. Like,
it was like having 5 or 6 of the guys from Empire.
Jack Black from High Fidelity.
Yeah, High Fidelity.
Yeah, I know exactly. It was.
It's like Jack Black based his character off of every Tower employee ever.
If you really want to know about Tower Records, there is a great documentary called All Things Must Pass.
Okay.
That is about Tower And the thing is
it streaming on anything? Do you know?
I don't know if it is or it may be. Tower Records, as far as I know, is still open in Japan, like the one in Tokyo.
Okay, that's not a destination store.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, but it's still again, kind of like we were talking about with Toys R Us.
Yeah.
The U.S. operations shut down.
Yeah.
And I think they also shut down, a lot of their outside the U.S., but the one in Japan was so lucrative still that it stayed open for a long time afterwards. But the name of the documentary is All Things Must Pass.
Nice.
Of course. Excuse me. Ooh. Tower Records was always, known for, and you'd see it in different movies and music videos and stuff, where it was on the Sunset Strip in Hollywood. That was my goodness, what is going on?
Wow.
I know.
No more coffee for you.
You would see that in a lot of movies and stuff. And so what was cool is the guy that started the business, you get this from that celebrities would come in to the place, because it was right there on Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
And one of the people who used to shop in there a lot was Elton John back in the 70s and early 80s and stuff. And so the owner would basically say, if you come in at X time, before we open, you can come in 2 hours before we normally open and shop, so nobody will bother you and stuff. And so they have all this film footage of Elton John shopping inside the tower, before anybody, with nobody else in there, just by himself, just going through records, and
nice.
and having a stack of, all of his vinyl and stuff. It's a really good documentary. All Things Must Pass is the name of it.
And check it out.
Again, with the name like All Things Must Pass, you know that it's going to end on a bad note eventually. But yeah, I miss that Tower Records. And a few years ago, again, if people who don't know, Nashville has been going through a real change in the last decade of a lot of growth and a lot of outside people coming in. And that building remained there for a long time. It become something else.
I forget
what it was after that. But I remember being downtown one day and seeing that they were demolishing the building.
Yeah.
And it was like, this is just not right, that building is no longer there.
Yeah.
And of course they put up a hotel, and it's a real expensive hotel or whatever, because that's what they've been doing all over Nashville.
Yeah.
But that was, again, another one of those, well, there goes another part of my past that's just gone, because that was a huge thing in my life for a lot of years. So,
well, since we're talking about that, let's move into the mall now. And since we're talking about Tower Books, Borders isn't there anymore.
Right.
B. Dalton isn't there anymore. And Walden Books isn't there anymore.
Walden Book is the one. I got a story about Walden Book.
Actually, Walden Book was one of the places that I used to go in and get my D&D stuff from.
Oh, yeah.
Because they carried quite a bit.
Walden Book was a good bookstore. I'll admit it.
It wasn't as good as my bookstore.
I know.
I was
your
local.
Bookstore. Yeah, but it was one of those things that Walden Book, because they were consistent.
Yeah.
Whatever mall you went to, the Walden Book was going to be stocked.
And it was going to look exactly the same.
Almost exactly. And there were some standalone stores as well. There was one in Hendersonville. I remember that. I remember seeing them around. So I know there was one in Huntsville, near where my aunt and uncle's old house was.
Y'all didn't have B. Daltons down here, did you? That was more up north when I was living
Dalton,
up there.
I think we had one at Cool Springs at one point. But yeah, Borders and Barnes and Noble and all those different places.
Barnes and Noble is still around.
They're still around, but not like they were.
Dude, I drive to Hendersonville to go to Barnes
that one
and
is
Noble.
pretty nice up there. But yeah, that was Walden Books.
And they've got a record. They've got a vinyl.
Oh yeah,
part of the store up there.
That was Walden Books was another one of those. Anytime we would go to the mall, that was one of the places we always wound up. Again, the magazine rack, but also the different books and stuff. And I was always and that was, I was a teenager, in the late 80s and in the early 90s.
It was also quiet in there.
It was quiet. You would go in, and it was one of those things that they for being a mall store, they actually had a pretty decent selection of stuff. of course, they would have, your New York Times top 10, or, that kind of stuff, or whatever your best sellers were.
Yeah.
But they would carry a lot of stuff, like, if you had an interest, like when I was a very young teenager, I had an interest in magic, and like, sleight of hand and all that kind of stuff. And they had a pretty decent selection of stuff.
Something I did not know about you.
Yeah, well, I've tried to, you know how I hate magicians, okay? It's like, and it's
you're like a little mini Barney Stinson.
That is one of those things that we won't get into that. That's a whole other tangent. But I
should have come out in your failed attempts to be cool episode.
Well, but the thing is, even I knew that wasn't cool back then, so that was
calling you David Copperfield.
But that's one of those things, like a little side, like stage magic, and sleight of hand and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is something that I love the history of it, and all the stuff that goes around it. But I actually hate the performance and the people who perform it.
Really?
Yes. It's a whole, it's just, I don't even know that. We could spend an hour talking about this. I'm like that with several things.
Because I actually thought it would be fun to go down to House of Cards one night downtown.
No, I can do without that. No.
Okay.
Did I ever tell you the story? I know because Dwayne, our friend Dwayne, has brought it up a couple of times. I told it we were playing poker one night of like,
okay,
and this is back in the mid '90s somewhere, and it was a friend of mine. We were at Hooters, okay, and like there was this guy at the next table who was like trying to hit on one of the girls by doing magic tricks, and I was just like, dude, you are so not cool right now. She is not going to give you the time of day once you pay that bill and get out of here. And it was always kind of one of those like, oh, idiot. But it's one of those things because of having a little bit of a background with it and watching, some of that stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of times I will watch people like the way they use their hands, like when they talk and everything. And I'm like, oh yeah, they've done magic at some point in their life, or they're a magician and haven't done a trick yet or something, just because of the way, because they're very expressive with their hands and the way that they, yeah. Okay. Anyway, I know that's a tangent of, which then actually reminds me, because there was a place in the mall when I was in that age that it was called
There was
Merlin's.
a magic store?
There was a magic store. It was only there for a few months because the overhead and all that kind of stuff.
Gotcha.
But I used to go there all the time and talk to those guys, and just, yeah. So anyway, what else? What were you talking about? So we went to the bookstores.
Natural Wonders.
Was that the science store?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. One of my the one teacher I had in high school that hated me after she got fired or quit. I was already out of high school at this point. Became the manager there.
Yeah.
And it was literally one of those things. I walked in there one day and we made eye contact, and I turned around and walked right back out. Just like not happening.
I always enjoyed that store, because they had like the tumbled rocks, and they had like the science experiments, and
they sold those really expensive, like what is this? The German, like the little molded animals.
Yeah.
It
was the cool science store before the Discovery store.
Yeah. I remember that place. That was pretty cool. Gadzooks.
Oh, and Limited too.
Yeah, but Gadzooks was basically, if you don't remember, Gadzooks was if you took Spencer and took all of the...
It's kind of like if you...
The novelty stuff out of it, like all
if you squished up Journeys and
Spencer's. Yeah, because the thing is, they were a clothing store, but they had a wall of T-shirts, and I used to buy T-shirts there all the time. Okay, funny story about this, okay?
Oh.
Corey, our friend Corey, who's been on here, worked there for a little while.
Really?
Yes. And it's funny because, like, you have to know Corey, because Corey is the type of person, as long as I've known him, he's always been this way. He's one of those people that, like, he worked at Gadzooks and he bought all these T-shirts and like clothes and stuff that he bought there different, and he wore those shirts, those same shirts for like 5 years.
Maybe a decade.
Yeah, I mean, well, I say 5 years because he couldn't wear them any longer by the time that he stopped wearing them, type stuff.
You realize he's going to want to
I know.
of us for this.
Well, he knows, but it's funny because, like, I found out that he worked at Gadzooks.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was working at Hobbytown, and so I called over there one day to see if he was working, and he answered the phone, and they were required to answer the phone like this. It's a great day at Gadzooks. This is Corey. How may I help you? So I was like, oh, this is going to be fun. And I started giving him so much crap. He's like, I don't even want to hear it, blah, blah, blah. So I got to where I would call over there when I knew he was working.
Yeah.
And as soon as I heard him say, I'd start going, it's a great day at Gadzooks. I gave him so much crap about that for the long, and he was only there a couple months or something like that. But I did, and that was one of those places. It was really big in the late '90s, and that's where you would go and buy your shiny shirts, that late '90s, glam, your pleather, your silver pleather, pants, and your like black kind of a see-through iridescent shirts.
Oh, so basically Gadzooks formed into Hot Topic.
Yeah, they were pre-Hot Topic. They took over the malls before Hot Topic did.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of, you go back and you watch, okay, here you go back and watch any of the early Creed videos, and the clothes they're wearing there probably came from Gadzooks. Okay. It's that type of stuff. Eventually they, I forget, they were bought out by somebody else, and then they got rid of all the young men's clothes, and they just went to a women's clothing for a little bit before they finally shut down completely.
Which brings me to the ultra girly Limited 2.
Why are you talking about Limited 2?
Well, because they pretty much everywhere.
Whatever it was.
Everyone,
Forever 21 bought them out. That's who it was. That's
Yeah.
why they moved into all that. So
Well, no, it's the reason I mentioned them is because they were generally within a storefront or two from each other.
Oh yeah.
And then there's the ultimate. Every time I think of this store, because every mall I went to had one of these, but every time I see this store, I immediately think of Christmas Vacation and the neighbors to the Griswolds. Because that couple,
Julie Louise Dreyfus, and I can't remember who the guy
because
was.
they obviously bought everything at Sharper Image.
Sharper Image,
yeah.
Sharper Image, yep. Yeah.
That you'd go in there and they'd have all the airplane.
Oh, I know.
Airplane store junk. Like you'd be riding the airplane, there'd be the Sharper Image catalog.
Oh, I know. It just. Oh man. I got you. I got you on that one. I'm trying to think of other.
Radio Shack.
Oh man, I'm glad you brought, because I forgot to put that one on my list. I miss Radio Shack.
Radio Shack before they were a junk store.
Yes.
Towards the end, they were nothing but a cell phone and junk store.
And it was cheap.
Oh yeah.
Cell phones.
No, the Radio Shack I miss
the Tandy computers.
Tandy computers, and you could actually go in there and buy stuff to like repair things.
Absolutely, and that's what I miss.
You could build stuff out of Radio Shack. You could buy kits to teach yourself electronics.
I know, and that's the thing I miss about Radio Shack is that there have been several times over the last few years when I'm like, I need a piece for like an AV piece or something whether it's an end to a cord or something or that type of thing, and it's like you can't just go to anywhere and buy that. I was like, I can order it off of Amazon, but I got to wait 3 days or whatever.
I won't buy crap from Amazon
or whatever, and it's just one of those things where it's like, but I have to wait. Whereas I used to be able to just walk into a store and. Hey,
and I'm the type, I want to be able to look at it and see what it is I'm buying before I spend the money on
and that was good sometimes because you would, whatever it was you're working on, you would take it with you.
Yeah,
I need one of these. Do you have what can we get to this?
And that's the thing. Back in the day, Radio Shack, the folks that worked at Radio Shack were not just guys, not just salesmen. They were like they
knew their stuff.
They were tech savvy. If you needed a certain resistor to replace something on a motherboard, they could get it. If you had a CB that was screwed up and you needed to replace parts on the motherboard, you could do that.
Yep. I know. And there was one right here locally, and again there was one in the mall. There was, and it was one of those things. But
you could do CB out of there. You could do ham out of there.
Yep.
You could do some
absolutely
basic like video broadcasting out of there.
Yeah, you could buy all kinds of that kind of stuff.
The TV antennas and the towers out of there.
Yeah, I know. They sold remote control cars,
Yeah.
and I mean it was
And
one of those.
their remote control cars were not junk either. They were good.
They like I said, of course, then you have the Tandy computers, which was an IBM clone back in the day, and
A lot of people's first PA systems were Tandy Olympus.
Olympus, yeah.
Olympus PA systems.
So, but yeah, that's just for this, and again, it's one of those things that Radio Shack was not some place that I went to very often, but when I needed Radio Shack, it was great that they were around.
Yeah, and they had standalones, and they were in the mall.
Yes, they did. And now, the thing is, they are still around and very limited. There is one here semi-locally.
Where?
It's in Laverne. And
it's a junk store. Isn't
I'm sure. I don't know. I haven't, but it was one of those things. I remember driving by it and going and seeing the sign and being like, "That's a Radio Shack," and
Okay.
I was like, "No, that's an actual Radio Shack."
That's it. You and I need to get in the car one weekend and
Go,
drive out
yeah.
there and take a look.
Yeah.
And if it's not a junk store,
I'm sure it probably is because that's all they were. The last decade they were open. Radio Shack. I'm glad you brought that one up because. Let's go through. I've got several more here. Do you remember Farmore?
no.
Okay, they were a. How do I describe them? Well, it's FAR, F or PHAR, like pharmacy.
Yeah.
And then MOR, Farmore, and so it was one of those things where they were kind of like. They were kind of like a Walgreens, but not as good.
Okay.
And that's all I know how to describe. But they were one of those things that like they carried a little bit of everything. The big thing is that they had a pharmacy there. You could buy groceries there, but they didn't have like a whole lot of groceries. But they had kind of like a convenience store type thing. They also had a video store that they ran out of there for a while.
Wow.
They carried a limited amount of toys. They carried a limited amount of this and that or whatever. And it's funny because
That must have been a regional thing.
Yeah, but no, it wasn't. It was, but it was a large regional thing.
Because it kind of sounds like what Eckert's was.
Eckert's is another one. We had Eckert's here also. That's another Eckert's was kind of like Walgreens or a CVS or a Rite Aid
was kind of
or
like if
something
you
like
smashed
that.
a Walgreens and a Dollar General together.
Yeah, a lot of that. But far more, and I don't have all the details here, but what ultimately ended them was because of a federal lawsuit, of like a racketeering lawsuit.
I was going to say, were they handing out OxyContin?
It wasn't that. It was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a stock thing. Like the owners were doing some kind of stock fraud.
They were totally pulling some SEC illegal stuff.
Let's put it this way. They were doing so well in the late 80s and into the very early 90s that Walmart, Sam Walton, that owned him, was actually worried about them overtaking Walmart at one point. That's how well they were doing, and then smashed into the wall, and that was it. I mean, just like they self-destructed, and when they self-destructed, that was it.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, and another one. You remember Zayre department stores at all?
What is it?
Zayre, Zayer.
No.
It was another one that was over here. We had one here locally. It closed in the mid '80s. They had been around though since like the '40s or something, and they were, and it was on par with the Kmart, something like that. And I'm saving Service Merchandise.
Yeah.
Okay, we haven't talked about them yet. They went out of business in 2002. I remember this because my first wife's father worked for them for 20 odd years.
Okay.
Because Service Merchandise's headquarters, like their main offices,
it was here in Nashville.
They were in Brentwood, which is just south of Nashville. And that was I remember because Service Merchandise was it was like a catalog place.
Yes.
You would go there and they would have a display of like I say, they did jewelry and they did all that kind of stuff
on display.
And they had a little card, and you would get it, and you would go and pay for it, and then you would go and stand. And they had this conveyor belt, and it was all in the warehouse, and it would come down the conveyor belt, and they would give it to you. Check your receipt and everything.
Yep.
And then you could leave.
Yep.
So it wasn't one of those things where you walked in and was like, oh, I want this, and you pick it up and go pay for it. It's like, no,
Yeah.
You have to take the little tag up there. Well, if there weren't any tags, that means they were out of it. You know, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
They also, again, they had one of the catalogs that I used to love getting every year for Christmas.
Oh, yeah.
And the very first credit card I ever had was with them.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Oh, no.
And 18 years old, and they gave me a credit card.
And probably like 18% interest or
something
something
like that, yeah. And I'll be honest, I used it for Christmas a couple of times. You know, not for anything big, but just, you know, here and there. And I had it for a while, you know. I mean, up until I hadn't used it in years, but I still had the card up until they shut down.
What I remember about Service Merchandise is they had a great jewelry department.
Yes.
And my dad...
Yeah, they were known for their jewelry.
Yeah,
they really were.
In fact, a gentleman who worked for their jewelry department owns...
Yeah, they have service...
they own a
what's it called?
Jewelry repair place up in Harrisonville called Service
Yeah, they
Repair
have
or
a
something
couple
like
of them
that,
around. But that was what happened, and I know this again because I had inside information on this. The people who worked in the jewelry department basically pulled their money and bought up everything that they could when they were doing all the closeout stuff and opened Service Repair.
But my mom still has stuff repaired by them. You know, they're a great little place.
Yeah.
The quality's still as good as it used to be. But my dad liked really taking care of Mom and really doing nice things for him. One thing that he wanted to get her like a really nice, you know, like pearl necklace type thing, like you used to do in the old days. Well, he couldn't afford to buy one outright.
Right.
What he found out is through Service Merchandise, you could buy them a pearl at a time.
Oh, okay.
And so, you know, for one Christmas or something, he like got her the chain and like 2 or 3 pearls, and you know they had them by the by the different gauges. And for years, you know, for birthdays or Mother's Day, you know, we'd all go in together and like get her 2 or 3 more.
Right.
So that was, you know, the fact that you could build really expensive jewelry and a piece at a time.
And they were overpriced. I know this because I bought an engagement ring there.
They might have been overpriced, but they really took care of you.
Yeah.
If you had a problem with anything, you could take it back there.
I agree with that. That's true. That is true.
The extra money that you were paying for the product was worth the customer service that you were getting from them.
Right.
In the end.
Right. No, I agree with that's true. That I will give you that. But they're gone. They've been gone for almost 20 years now. And I do again, like I said, I was dating her at the time. We didn't marry. You know, we married next year after that was, you know, that happened. But I remember going through all of that, you know, with him because, like I said, he was in the corporate side of it.
Yeah.
And having to make decisions of who to fire and, you know, and let go and all that kind of stuff. People that had been with the company for years and years and years.
Decades,
you know, and it was just
that's awful.
Yeah, it was. And I remember when they finally shut it down for good, you know, and everything. It's just like, dang, you know.
I got 2 that shut down within months of each other.
Okay.
And I bought stuff from both of them. H.H. Gregg and Circuit City.
I almost said something about Circuit City. I hated Circuit City.
Really?
I hated that place because they worked on commission, and they were like sharks.
Yeah,
and I mean, it was literally one of those things. If you walked in and if you didn't look like you were going to buy the place out, they didn't want anything to do with you. And if you did talk to them about actually trying to buy stuff, they were constantly trying to upsell. I mean, constantly.
Yeah.
And they were some of the worst when it came to the
their return policies.
Their return policy, man, they tried everything they could to get you not to return it.
Yeah.
But the thing that they were really, really bad about was they were constantly trying to upsell audio video component cables.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, this is gold plated and blah blah blah. It's like that's all BS. Okay.
And
every bit of it's
and
BS.
The brand that they were always trying to upsell to, Monster.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was just
junk.
I mean, it was just, I hated going into that place because of that. But yeah, Circuit City and H.H. Gregg, I never did a lot of business with them. I've been in there a few times, but I remember when they closed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I was putting together my car stereo with the subwoofers and all that, that's where I bought my amp from. And I think I paid $100 for like a 200-watt Jensen MOSFET amp, which was...
Oh, yeah.
Unheard of at the time. It was on sale and something else, and I had a coupon, and I stole that.
I had a coupon. I'll tell you something that just popped into my head when I think about it. Remember Electronics Boutique?
No.
You don't? Okay. They eventually became EB Games.
Okay.
That's what the EB stood for, is Electronics Boutique.
No, I think I do remember them.
And
now.
they were cool because they were in malls, and they would sell Nintendo or Sega or that kind of stuff, but they really sold a lot of computer games. Like that was a PC games. It was a big thing for them, And again, they were a lot of times when you couldn't find it somewhere else, you would go there, but they were always more expensive.
Yeah.
And then
I bought like Starfront there. Or something.
Yeah. And then they were bought out by. Who were they bought? They were bought out by somebody, and that's when they became EB Games. I can't remember who it was now off the top of my head. Funko Land, that's who it was. They went in together.
Okay.
Funko Land, it was a gaming store, a video game store. Then the two of them merged. Maybe EB bought them or Funko Land bought them. I forget what it was exactly. They're no longer around anymore, and it sucks because they were actually kind of a cool place to go to. I've got one more to talk about that probably people older than us would know more about, and that's Woolworth.
Yeah, Woolworths.
We had one here locally, and the biggest thing with them was their lunch counter. Like that was the big thing with Woolworth, and it was good. A little greasy spoon, kind of like Waffle House a little bit. And you go in there and get, usually you have like a meat and three or something like that, or you just go in there and get your patty melt,
old-fashioned diner place.
Absolutely, and that was one of the cool things about that place.
Yeah.
But they were in another thing. They're kind of like Sears. They had been around for 100 years or so, and then all of a sudden they're gone. Now, apparently, Woolworth is still in business, but they are few and far between.
Well, I know I can. Back before I got super fat, I used to be able to find their flannel shirts were awesome. Them and back when Abercrombie and Fitch actually used to be a men's sporting goods outfitter.
Abercrombie and Fitch was one of those things when we finally got one here, because you heard about them and stuff. And I remember walking in and looking at the prices and immediately turning around and walking back out because they were so damn expensive.
That's because it had already gone metrosexual at that point.
Yeah.
I went to
one. I'm talking about early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s.
No, I actually went to one when I was out in San Diego for a trip, and it was all hardwood and like hunter green carpets and paint.
Oh, yeah.
It was like Last Man Standing, that sporting goods store?
Yeah. I haven't seen a lot of that show, but I know what you're talking about.
Okay, instead of having actual like fishing gear and hunting gear and all that, it was all men's clothing, but it was like clothing for outside. And their flannel shirts and like blue jeans were like some of the most comfortable I've ever owned in my life.
You know what I just thought of while you were saying that? You remember Just for Feet?
Yeah.
That place was cool. I liked that place because they had like a basketball, they had like a mini basketball court inside.
They had like a half court inside. Yeah.
And usually you could get like really good deals on shoes and stuff there. But
you used to be able to be a halfway decent pickup game.
Yeah, I know. And that I remember going there, and Discovery Zone was right next to it. That was a kids, kind of like a lot of these jump parks and stuff.
Sports
Authority was another one. Yeah. And I'm down to.
I don't have anything left.
Okay, I'm down to some stuff that we're going to. 3 of these we're going to talk about together.
Okay.
Blockbuster Video.
Yeah.
Hollywood Video.
Yeah.
And Movie Gallery.
Yeah.
Okay. Blockbuster Video at one time was making so much money and was so successful that it was ridiculous. Okay.
They were basically printing money.
They really were, and it was one of those things that they were everywhere. I mean, literally, it was one of those things they were doing so well that they
were Starbucks of the video world.
They really were. And the whole thing when Hollywood Video came along, their whole MO was wherever there is a Blockbuster Video, we're going to be within 2 blocks of them. We're basically, and they really try to do across the street as often as they could.
Yeah.
And they were doing, both companies were doing, I mean, they were number one, and they were 1A and 1B for a decade. I mean, just.
I'll admit, I was a Blockbuster guy.
Yeah.
And then
I was a Hollywood person.
The Hollywood Video moved in, and I went in there just to see what they had, and I threw away my Blockbuster card.
The thing with Blockbuster is that they wouldn't carry certain movies. Of course, they didn't have an adult room, which, that was okay, fine. But they wouldn't carry anything that was NC-17.
Yeah.
And there was even some R-rated movies that they were like, well, we're more of a family-friendly store. We're not, and you would not get a lot of independent releases in there at all.
Hollywood, you get independent releases, and their horror movie selection was out of this world.
Now, I say that you had those. Blockbuster in Hollywood was 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
And then everybody else was a distant third.
Yeah.
And
most of them were mom and pop stores.
And they were, but one of those chains was Movie Gallery that was in that distant third, okay?
Very.
I worked for Movie Gallery for a while.
Yeah, you did.
I loved working in the store. I hated dealing with their corporate policies, okay?
Yeah.
And their whole MO was they went around and they bought up mom and pop chains.
Yeah.
And that's how, and they would slap Movie Gallery on it. They would carry, now here's the thing that was cool about Movie Gallery. They would carry a lot of stuff that you would not be able to find anywhere else.
That's true.
Okay. They also had an adult room, and I have stories about having to deal with that whole situation. I think I've told some of them on here before.
I think you have too.
But here's what happened. They were a distant third for a long, long, long time, and they had little man disease.
Napoleon syndrome.
Yeah, they really thought that they were up there with Hollywood and Blockbuster, and they weren't. They didn't have the capital for it, like I said. Well, in 2005, Hollywood Video declared bankruptcy because they overexpanded, is basically what happened.
Yeah.
They were trying to keep up with Blockbuster. They overexpanded. They just accrued so much debt they couldn't. I think they had about $400 million in debt or something like that. It was close to $400 million in debt.
Yeah.
And Movie Gallery saw an opportunity and bought them.
You never buy a company for the debt.
Well, in doing that, they assumed that debt.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things that, like, they not only had their movie galleries, but they also had Hollywood Video, as well as Game Crazy, which was part of Hollywood Video, that kind of stuff. Well, ultimately, it wound up driving all of them out of business. Because of, again, when you are a distant third and you buy one of the big two and assume all their debt, you don't have the ability to keep up with them.
If you're in a boat and you have an anchor, don't ever buy another anchor.
Mm-mm. Now, here's the thing. Blockbuster Video, people talk about the running narrative about the decline of Blockbuster Video has been Netflix, the streaming, that kind of stuff. That's not 100% true. It helped. It was one of the nails in the coffin.
Yeah.
But they had the failed Blockbuster Music.
Yep.
/ Warehouse Music that didn't.
I went into Blockbuster Music once and I was like, I'm never coming back here again. The customer service sucked. The selection sucked. Everything was always a wreck.
Yeah, they overexpanded. They were slow about, it was during the VHS years that they really thrived. When DVD came in, they switched over, but it was one of those things by that point, DVDs it was cheaper to buy them than rent a lot of times. Quite honestly, one of the reasons why I stopped using Blockbuster is because of their policies, some of their policies, one of which was, and this happened to multiple people that I know, where it was one of their requirements was that you had to put a credit card on file with them. And it was one of those things that they would charge, like if you had late fees and didn't pay them by a certain time, they would charge it to your credit card.
Yeah.
And I just, no, this is, and then they eventually stopped doing that, but then they got really bad about sending stuff to collections.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, I'm going to come back in there and rent at some point. I know I'm going to have to pay those things, but they literally would, like, if you were more than 90 days on something, they would send it to collections. It's like, oh, great, now you're messing with my credit score on top of it all. So it's,
I think I had, well, I was a kid. I had a card.
Your parents had an account, is what it was.
No, I take it back. I was like 18.
Okay.
So I was able to open an account.
Right.
But I think they sent me to collections over like $4.
I know.
And I looked at them. I was like,
And that was the whole thing. They did the same thing to me.
I'll just go to Hollywood Video, and I outlasted them.
Oh yeah, same thing. Yeah,
they went out of business with me owing them $4.
Yeah, I know. And that's the whole thing. Is it's like $4. You're sending this collection for $4.
Yeah, which after it goes to collections, it turns into like $150.
I know it's something.
I was like, I'm not paying this.
Right. And but the thing is like I was saying, people talk about how Netflix, and Redbox was another thing which they tried with their Blue Box. You remember that? They tried that. It didn't last long. Here's the funny thing. In the early 2000s, Blockbuster Video had a chance to buy Netflix and didn't do it because they were like, well, this doesn't really.
Well, thank goodness, because they probably would have just shut them down.
Well, but it was like they were like this this doesn't fit our model of what we want to do, because they were really into we want you to come to our store. Yeah. We want to get people in the store so we can sell candy and upsell them on this and that and blah, 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 blah. And it ultimately wound up driving them out of business. I remember when Blockbuster closed for good. It was in 2011, I think it was, something like that.
And good riddance.
Yeah, and I didn't weep for them at all. Now, I do miss having local video stores. I
like the mom and pop stores.
And we've had a few of them that have hung around for a little bit, but I've noticed that they're going away, especially with everything happening now.
What I liked about the mom and pop stores is, my favorite one when we were living in Illinois had a Little Caesars pizza inside.
Oh, yeah.
So you would go in, you would order your pizza, you would look for your movies while the pizzas were cooking, and then they'd go, hey, your pizza's ready.
That was one of the first ones that we had around here that, it was Silver City Video, which was kind of famous around here because eventually it became an adult movie place.
Oh, really?
But they had a room, but it was mainstream stuff prior to that. And then after a while, they're like, we're just going to become an adult. That's all it is. They moved from there. But the thing is, they were in a little strip with a Little Caesars. So it was one of those things of, hey, go order the pizza. We're going to walk down, walk 4 or 5 doors up. We look through there, get the movies, and then we'll come back and get the pizza and go home.
You would literally walk in the front door, walk up to the counter, and go, this is the pizza I want. Mm-hmm. And then you would walk back to the videos because it was all in the same room. Mm-hmm. But the cool thing about it is because they would put up the movie posters. They would set up promotional movie posters.
Oh, absolutely.
And when they got through with them, they'd roll them up, put a rubber band around them, and sell them for like
$2
or $3 a pop. And sometimes you could go in and be like, hey.
Yeah, I want that one. I know. I used to do the same thing over here with the movie gallery that was here.
I've got like a cardboard tube somewhere in my house of like all my old movie posters.
I wish I had all of mine. I really do.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are okay. And I have one more.
And Little Caesars is still around, but it's not what it used to be.
It's not what it used to be. The pizza's not as well. We've talked about this. Their regular pizzas are not as good as they used to be.
Yeah.
However, their deep dish is excellent, and especially for the price.
Yeah,
it's like $8 or something, and it's like, this is for $8. This is great pizza.
It used to be Little Caesars pizza.
Right.
You would order a pizza,
and you got a pizza,
right. And it came in that long box.
Yeah. Both of, and they had the commercial. Remember the commercial? And every place they went into, they tried to get the same telephone number.
Yes.
And I'll always remember this. It was 244-2222.
Yeah.
And the reason I remember that is because they had a commercial that used to run. And it was a guy. It was a guy. He was wearing the top half of a suit of armor, and he was standing on and he was wearing a tutu.
Yeah,
and tights, and he was standing on a golf course, and it was the commercial was he was singing. He was like, you call Little Caesars, it's 244-2222. But the whole time he's sitting in there, golf balls are coming flying in and hitting off that armor. I mean, just like
their commercials were silly back then.
They were ridiculous. Of course,
but the pizza was better back then.
The pizza was better back then, and but. Yeah, I miss video stores. I know there are boutique video stores around that have become, a thing. And I'll be honest, if I had the means, I would love to open something like that. Where it's a video store.
You're kind of the real life Randall.
Yeah, it's a video store / music venue / library / coffee shop / like where it's basically one of those things where all the weirdos can come and hang out, and and you can like, hey, do you have a copy of whatever? Yeah, I got this over here, type stuff, and and do that type of where it's more of a place to be, where new ideas and stuff.
Yeah,
because I'm kind of, as much as I hate to say it, I'm a little bit of a hippie at heart, so a little more of the avant-garde type,
kind of a punk rock hippie,
something like that. So, but the last one I want to talk about.
Okay.
And this one is actually relevant to now as well.
All right.
Showbiz Pizza.
Oh, Showbiz.
Showbiz Pizza. We have Chuck E. Cheese now. Okay.
Yeah.
Chuck E. Cheese famously was founded by Nolan Bushnell, who one of the founders of Atari. Okay. Showbiz Pizza was founded. I don't have all the in front of me. I remember reading this and hearing about it. Basically, they came out around the same time. Something to do with a parent company owning both of them, or in the beginning, or something like that, or maybe no, a parent company buying both of them eventually, like when Nolan Bushnell sold out Chuck E. Cheese. And then that's the reason why Showbiz Pizzas went away, is because of Chuck E. Cheese kind of became the dominant brand out of that. Showbiz Pizza, they had the Rock-afire Explosion.
Yeah.
That was Billy Bob and Fats, the Gorilla, and Mitzi, and I forget all the names of this.
It's kind of funny because...
And there is a great documentary called The Rock-afire Explosion that really goes into detail on all this stuff.
Because you look at that band and then you look at the video game Five Nights at Freddy's.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The thing with it is that Showbiz Pizza was very instrumental in bringing arcade video games to middle America.
Yeah.
Yes, you would have, a Barrel of Fun or a Tilt. Barrel of Fun is something, also the arcade, the mall arcades,
Yeah.
You would have something like that, or a standalone, whatever it was, somebody locally would have, we had,
the Pizza Hut.
Gameland was what we had here, there was a couple of them around. It did really well, but this was more the family friendly.
Yeah.
Because people forget that arcades were not someplace. I mean, yeah, you would get kids in there, but it was also a lot of teenagers standing around smoking, and they were selling drugs in there.
Yeah.
And there was, it was not
shady.
It was very shady, and
I had a ball.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's back when things were a lot more fun. But it was one of those things that Showbiz Pizza was like, you would go in there and they would have legit arcade games.
Yeah.
It wasn't these prize, redemption games and crap like that.
Yeah, the tickets and all
right.
that.
Now you had some of it because skee ball was the big thing, and you had the prizes you could get. You build up enough tickets and all that kind of stuff.
And kind of to a lesser extent, Godfather Pizza.
A much lesser extent, because it didn't have the same, which Godfather's still around.
I haven't seen one in
They are,
ages.
and it's one of those things where they are kind of like, they'll go in partnership with like say a Quick Sack or something like that, where it's one of those things where, and it's not just we have this, this rotating, heated lamp, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you can actually go in and buy, and like, you can order from them.
So,
and
the Godfathers,
take out.
I remember you had the buffet.
Right.
You could also order the pizzas, but they always had a huge game room.
They did pretty well, but nothing like Showbiz.
Nothing like Showbiz.
Showbiz was, I had birthday parties there. I went to a ton of birthday parties. Everybody wanted to have a birthday party there. That was my, and it's one of those things that place was so cool. I loved it, And then we got a Chuck E. Cheese here in the mid 80s, something like that. It was out on Murfreesboro Road, like on the south side of town.
Yeah.
And it was crap. We went there one time. It didn't last a year, and then all of a sudden Showbiz shut down in the early 90s and became Chuck E. Cheese. And it's like, what's going on here? How did this happen? And that's what the whole thing of them, the company shutting down.
Not Godfather.
Chuck E. Cheese.
Showbiz Pizza.
Yes.
Their pizza was actually good.
Yes, it was.
Their pizza was great.
Unlike the Chuck E. Cheese.
Chuck E. Cheese is that cardboard with a little bit of ketchup.
Now, here's
garbage.
the thing with Chuck E. Cheese. The reason why I say it's come back into Providence. When all of this COVID stuff started, I remember, because we still have a Chuck E. Cheese here near the mall, and I remember seeing they'd put signs up everywhere about, hey, you can still order our pizza, and I'm like, no one goes there for your pizza. Okay, no. I'm sorry, that's ridiculous, But it's just recently been announced that they're heading towards bankruptcy. and it looks like they're done for.
Good. Maybe they'll sell off the showbiz stuff.
I would like to see that
back.
happen.
Yeah.
I would. Now, here's the cool thing: there are a few independently owned showbiz
Really?
around. They're not Showbiz Pizza Place. That was the name of it. It's like
Yeah.
Showbiz Pizza Experience or something. It's basically people who grew up with that
Yeah.
stuff who have gone and they've got the animatronics and everything, and it's like I said, if you watch that, there's a documentary called The Rock-afire Explosion.
Sure.
And that is really good, and it's about this guy that found out that he could still order the band and stuff. This is in the early 2000s, and he even went in and programmed to put some YouTube videos up of them doing newer songs, all this kind of stuff.
Nice.
And eventually he opened a place. I think this was in Alabama or something like that, Alabama or Mississippi or something,
Yeah.
And opened a place as Showbiz something, whatever. But there's been a few other ones that have popped up around, and it's like that. It just that again, we talk about that picture that I took of the Toys R Us being demolished.
Yeah.
I posted it on my Facebook, and not only on my main feed, but also in another podcasting group that I'm in. And I mean, it's gotten all kinds of oh my God, type
Yeah.
stuff. And of course, people talking about, oh yeah, the one around me has been down for a while. It's something else now, or this or that. Very few they've been torn down. A few of them have, but I've gotten very few responses of that. Mainly it's something else went in there. But people locally, especially my friends, my actual friends, several of them have commented like, man, that place was magic when I was a kid. Toys R Us. Showbiz Pizza was the same way.
Yeah.
It was just like you walk in and it was just like overwhelmed of, look at all the fun I'm going to have. This is going to be the best 2 or 3 hours that we're in here, type stuff. As long as I've got tokens, everything's going to be fine. It's and that type of stuff. And I don't know. I don't know if kids have that now. I mean, I know that these jump zones and different places like that are really big now.
Yeah.
And it looks like it might be fun. I'm my stepdaughter. I remember taking her to that was a Monkey Joe's or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a national thing.
Yeah.
And she had fun in there. When she was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. Type stuff. But
now it's like the trampoline places.
yeah, and that's jump zone. Different places.
The rock climbing places.
Yeah. And I've got the axe throwing places have popped up everywhere.
Well, those are for people our age.
And it has no appeal to me.
Dude,
of course,
come
I'll tell you
on.
the thing that's really big now is the escape rooms. That's a huge thing.
I don't even care about.
I don't either.
I wouldn't mind going and throwing some axes.
Yeah.
But talk about a good way to get out your aggression.
Yeah, but you get places like we have Dave and Buster's now.
I hate that place.
It was Jillian's at one point.
Yeah.
They were bought out. And,
I hated that place.
And it's one of those things where again the games that they have in there are predominantly some kind of
It's either a motorcycle game or a
Oh, yeah.
driving game
Well, but I'm talking about
or a
they're-
first-person shooter.
But they're predominantly the redemption games because it's one of those things they want you to keep spending money,
Yeah.
and I can get more tickets here and this and that, and that's fun. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can play skee ball with the best of them. I love skee ball. I literally could take $20 and play skee ball until that money ran out and just have a good time,
Yeah, I mean that's fun.
But it's still one of those
That
things.
or air hockey.
Yeah, you gotta have 2 people for that though, But
Saying you don't have any friends. Is that what you're
you know
saying?
what I'm saying. But it's one of those things that none of this stuff's coming back.
No.
We might, again, like with Toys R Us, we might get these pop-up stores or inside a Target or, these, the thing was when they announced that they were reopening some Toys R Us, like these smaller mall Toys R Us's,
Yeah.
which we had one here at Opry Mills before they shut down. We had one of those small ones. They had done a few of those, and it was okay, but you just didn't get the selection there that you would get at one of the big box stores.
It was a Toys R Us KB
something
Toys
like that.
Story.
But
yeah,
the closest one to here
yeah,
is Houston, Texas. And now they may expand and do some more over time, but I'm glad that they are, quote unquote, coming back.
You ever been to Houston?
No, I've been
once.
in the airport.
I don't want to go back.
I've been in the Houston Fort Worth airport a couple of times, and that is the horrible place to be.
Is that the Bush Airport?
It's the big one, yeah. It's the one Houston.
I've been to Houston twice. Then I didn't like it either.
Or no,
time.
that's not the Dallas Fort Worth is one thing. Is the Houston? No, it's the Dallas Fort Worth I've been through. I take that back.
Yeah.
No, Dallas Fort Worth is terrible because no matter what airline you fly, whenever you fly into there, your connecting flight is going to be on the absolutely opposite
you
side.
got to catch the train,
and you have to take off because my connecting flight's leaving in half an hour, and I've got to go all the way across this place.
Yeah,
that's
where we flew from.
Yeah, I haven't been in the Houston airport.
I've actually been in Houston proper.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go back.
Yeah. It's the reason why the Titans came here. Huh? Anyway, a little rough salt in that wound, huh? It's like, anyway, but yeah, that's that we've done a pretty good job here of talking about places that are no longer with us, and
I think so.
It's one of those things that I am going to have for this one especially. I will have a YouTube playlist of commercials.
If you can find some.
They're all over YouTube, believe me.
Okay.
And especially, some of the Toys R Us and Showbiz Pizza and places like that.
When are you going to get your tattoo?
That's probably the next thing I'll get done, and it'll probably be in the next month or so.
Okay.
So, I'm gonna let this one heal up a little bit before I go back. I've already talked to Jason about it, so it's for those of you listening, I'm getting a tattoo of a sticker that I found. It's a Toys R Us sticker. It's got Jeffrey, it's circular, and it says "I'll always be a Toys R Us kid" around it, and it's something that I had wanted for a while as it was, and then with this happening, I'm like, that just galvanized that I'm getting this tattoo.
And I talked him into putting it in a place that it's going to hurt.
I didn't know. Well, tattoos hurt, okay, but I didn't know where the placement was. But when you said, "Hey, why don't you put it right there on your wrist?" I was like, "That's actually a good place for it to be."
And have it facing out, so when you shake hands with somebody.
So, but I've already, like I said, I've already talked to my artist, about that.
What's up, Jason?
Yeah, I
know he hadn't met me yet, but
but I've already
out to Jason.
I've talked to him already about coming on the show, and he's up for it. So he lives here locally too,
well, we need to have
in the neighborhood. So. But anyways, guys,
we should have him tattoo you while we're on the
no.
Oh yeah, come on.
No, I mean, not that it's not a big deal because Jason will tell you anytime that I go in there for the 2 hours that I'm in there, we're just talking constantly.
I mean, you can finally get that tramp stamp you've always wanted.
I'm not getting a tramp stamp. Not getting a tramp stamp. I knew a guy one time that got a tramp stamp that said tramp stamp. He was a weirdo anyway. So.
I knew a guy that actually had the words "your name" tattooed on his butt.
Okay.
And then he'd go into bars and he'd bet people that he had.
I have your name tattooed.
Tattooed on my butt. Yeah. And he would win money that way.
So, anyways, guys, tell us about your favorite no longer with us stores, dearly departed. I think that's what I'm going to title this episode.
Or your favorite memories of those.
Yeah,
stores.
because we all have them. That's and I guess we didn't really get into the memories so much as we probably could have on this.
Yeah,
I know I talked a little bit about like Hills, that kind of stuff. But anyways, like I said, get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us here.
All right, hey guys, we want to thank you for listening and supporting us all this time. Just wanted to let you know we can be found on Apple Podcast at Project X Pod. We're also on Google Play. We're on Stitcher. We're on TuneIn Radio, and hopefully we're going to be getting on some other platforms also. You can also get a hold of us by email at projectxpod@gmail.com. I've also got my own private one at bigdavexpod@gmail.com. We're on Twitter at Project XPod, and there's also at Big Dave XPod. We're on Facebook at Project X Podcast, and we're on YouTube. We're starting to do some stuff on YouTube at Project X Podcast. So if you like us, please spread the word. Let your friends know. If you can't stand us, tell all your enemies. You can torture them that way. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
All right, that's enough. Let's get on with the show.
All right, bye.
And so we're back, and now we are going to say adieu. And
adieu.
Just so everybody knows, I'll always be a Toys R Us kid. And that doesn't matter if I'm in my 40s now, when I finally kick the bucket at whatever age, I am still going to be a Toys R Us kid, and that's never going to end.
Yep.
And it's funny sometimes the stuff that sticks with you in life, and that for whatever reason, Toys R Us just really put its stamp on my life. So anyways, guys, it was good spending this time with you. I am Alan Smith.
I'm Big Dave.
And we will see you next time.
Night.
I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with. I don't want to grow up. I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got the best for so much less. You really flip your lid. From bikes to trains to videos.